Alright, well, we're back with advanced permissions. I'm going to put this to the side for the moment because we're going to refer to it a couple of times. It will have my private UI on by default, so there's the recording UI. Just ignore it if it's in view. I'm sorry. I'm just going to actually double check we're zoomed out. Field of view might go out just a little bit. No, I'll leave it as field of view. I've had trouble before. I'm trying to get, like, my hands in and everything in the world in, but that's fine. Okay, advanced permissions. So advanced permissions are configured through the inspector, and they're in the world root. So I usually configure them in an empty world. So if you open up an inspector in the empty world, you'll see this is a basic empty world. So there's a plate and then a procedural skybox. Under this world, you'll see that there is a roles folder. Now, roles controls the permissions within a world. If we click the roles top level item, there's nothing here. It's just a storage item, and then all of the roles are below here. I've got this open so that I can. Oh dear, I moved. I've got this open so I can talk about it a bit more. Oh, that's parented to me. That's gonna be fun. Let's see if we can. Oh, I can't click that button. Why does that exist if I can't click it? Okay, we'll just go from this distance. So the thing to note here is that there are a couple of groups here that don't exactly match the permission systems over here, the permission listing over here. So you can see spectator permissions. This controls what a spectator can do. Anyone that's set to spectator gets this permission set. Permissions in EOS are a set of components added to these slots. You cannot add additional slots, you cannot rename these slots, and you cannot add random components to them. They won't work. They have to be laid out like this, and they have to have these exact components in them. They're copied somewhere else in the world, storage or the system or the engine that Fuchs was talking about, and that's why you can't just duplicate these or make your own one. They wouldn't render here, and they won't apply. So just keep that in mind. So spectators get the spectator permission slot, guest get the guest permission slot, and you'll see the guest one is empty, and this is where it starts coming up about the builder non-builder status here. So basically non-builder applies to any rank below builder. So any rank below builder gets this set. And then here is non-admin. Any rank below admin here gets these permission sets. So this is non-admin, and then it stacks like a tree. So spectator permissions are overwritten by guest permissions, guest permissions are overwritten by non-builder permissions, builder permissions are overwritten by builder permissions, and then admin permissions are on top there. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. I will tend to basically only edit spectator permissions and non-builder permissions. This will control what a spectator can do and then what a guest can do, or a non-builder, so moderator as well. The oddity here is guest. Guest does have one of these. We can go into that as we go through them. So I'm going to start by loading spectator permissions and show you what's here. So in spectator permissions, you'll see here that the first one we have in the list here is common tool permissions. Common tool permissions describes the list of tools which someone can use. Here you can see that there is a allow only whitelisted tools. This means that only the none of the tools can actually be used. That's what that means. So if it says allow only whitelisted tools, this means that only tools listed here can be used. And as there are none, nothing can be used in terms of tooling. The next one is grabbable permissions. This controls what a user can grab. And here you'll see again it's set to whitelist, and there is nothing in this list, so they can't grab anything. With the exception, of course, of dynamic bones here. So you can see here the dynamic bones is in this list, which allows them to grab those. Avatar object permissions, I'm not entirely sure what this is about. I think it's something to do with like objects that are on the avatar or something like that. The team would have to confirm. I haven't used this one personally. But again, there's a whitelist and a blacklist option here, so whitelist, blacklist, and you can add things here. I think these are tags. I'm not sure how that one works, so I won't cover it. The next is world permissions. World permissions is probably one of the critical ones. This has allow transferring objects out. When you have an object in the world, let me just do this tool, and then, oh, this is what you get for private UI everywhere. When you open up the world menu here and you have something in your hand and you're grabbing this and you swap to another world, that's called transferring it out. So I could take this tool to my local world. So if that's unchecked, then they can't do that. That means they can't steal assets from your world as well. It also prevents saving. the saving of objects. Allow spawning objects is what controls you spawning objects from the inventory. Examples being anything in your inventory, basically. Save copy permission is what allows people to save a copy of the world. So here it defaults to only when public, which means spectators can only save a copy of the world when it's public. Depending on the security of your world, you might want to set this to only owners, which only allows owners to save a copy of the world. If you want a world that's completely locked down, please set this up. Next is touchable permissions. Touchable permissions controls what people can touch. This is things like buttons, toggles, touch toggles, checkboxes, all sorts of things like that. Again, this is set to whitelist for spectators so they can't do anything. There is a whitelist. There's also a component list. I'm not sure of the format for this component list, but I think it's like the literal name of the component. I'm also not sure why there are two lists. Next is locomotion permissions. Locomotion permissions allows you to restrict what permissions someone has. Sorry, what locomotion settings they have. This is blank right now, and it's added as a blacklist. I could add a locomotion here, and that would prevent the spectator permissions from using them. I'll go to a world towards the end of this video and show you a applied permission setup. One of the problems here is that this is all blank, and we're going through it. I'm just explaining what each one does, and that's a key for you to go and have a look and see if you can apply that to a scenario. Right here, as we're in a blank world, we don't have a scenario. Scaling here will control if a user is allowed to scale themselves. In this case, they are not. Let me just check this one is private. It is, yeah. So this prevents them from scaling themselves. You can also set to allow or in edit mode only. I'll talk about edit mode in just a second. So it's and then min scale and max scale defines how big they can make themselves. So it defaults to 0 and infinity, which means you can make yourself really big or really small. Jump to user here controls the ability for a user group to push the jump button on the user menu. So this jump button here will jump you to that user. If you're playing a game where there's like, I don't know, parkour or maybe like a capture the flag scenario, definitely set that to disallow, because otherwise they can just jump around the map and kill each other. Voice permission here controls the ability to change your voice. So on this menu here, you'll see I'm currently muted, and for spectators, the max allowed voice mode is normal, which means as a spectator, you can only go to normal. You can't go to shout or broadcast. I've seen this super useful for worlds that, again, have a kind of narrative experience to make sure that people can't broadcast. You could also be really cruel and set spectators to be on mute all the time. Please don't do that, but if you have a scenario that allows for it, go for it. You might want to make a world where no one can speak. That would be an interesting mechanic to take a look at. Allow change other users allows you to change the voice state of another user. And again, that's off a spectator. I'm going to go ahead and jump into guest now because, oh sorry, non-builder, because non-builder talks about how the restrictions work for inspectors and also tools. So if we jump to non-builder, you'll see some things have changed here. At the top here for common tool permissions, you'll see that there is an allow whitelisted tools here. So in the tooltip rules, it's saying that the non-builder can use a raw data tooltip, a sender display tip, brush tip, track device manager, camera control tip, or particle spray. To go over those again, but use more common terms, raw data tooltip is any kind of tool that the community have made, pretty much. So guns fall into this category, the Polylogic spinner tool would fall into this category. Center display tip is that green tip which controls camera sending. That's mostly superseded by the camera setup that we're using, but it's also sometimes useful sometimes. Brush tip is for brushing. It's just the, you know, the drawing in the air. Track device manager is that hips tool. It's the old full body calibration. Camera control is to control a drone camera that follows you around. I don't see that much with this camera system. And particle spray is that red tip which fires sparks by default but can be configured to fire any sparks. So here, if you didn't want non-builders being able to use guns or annoying guns that spam loud sounds, just hit X here and now they can't equip guns. They also won't be able to use them in the wild. So this includes like holding. So most guns, in fact, let's grab a gun. Let's see what we've got here. gadgets, weapons, here we go. So most guns allow you to fire it in two states, like either held, or equipped, and then you can fire it from being equipped. That protects both. It won't allow them to interact with it if it's equipped or even if it's just held. Rid of the gun. Cool. Moving onwards, the grabable permissions for a non-builder is set to blacklist developer. And what this means is any items that are tagged as a developer item are not able to be used. Where'd my tooltip go? Oh, there it is. So if we take a look at an inspector by inspecting it, yep, we're going to inspect an inspector. You'll see at the root of inspector, there is a tab here, a tag field here called developer. And so what this is saying is, because the grabable permissions are set to blacklist and the tag here developer is on the blacklist, then non-builders cannot touch the blacklisted item here, developer items. Again here, the same applies to touchable. So the dev tooltip here is a developer tagged item, so non-builders can't touch it. And then again, there's locomotion permissions, which are blank, and then world permissions, which are a bit more permissive here. Allow transferring objects out is enabled, and allow spawning objects is enabled. That's non-builder permissions. I'm just going to go straight ahead to builder permissions, and you'll see on builder permissions that there's a few more items. The builder permissions are quite permissive. You'll see that I can go up to broadcast on my voice. I can also respawn people, kick people, assign roles. This is what I mean about the confusion between moderator and builder. Builders can also do all of these things, and these things here seem like moderator positions. But that might be worked out when the team rework the permission system. When they do that, I will update this video. That's it for the permissions that exist here. I'm going to go through a couple of scenarios in probably a third video actually, just to like split things up, because I've been talking for 12 minutes, which is a long time. I am going to go over one more screen though, which is in the user spawner. There is a more kind of permission-y things. So in the user spawner here, which we're inside, so I'm just going to go forwards a little bit. There we go, now we're inside it. You'll see here there's a bunch of checkboxes here. So if you want to turn off name badges, you can use this checkbox here. If you want to turn off name badge icons, you can turn off this badge here. This prevents the icons like Patreon, etc. from showing. I do not know what server voice and client voice do. I wouldn't suggest unchecking them. It sounds bad. Server tools and client tools the same. I don't know what that means. I would not advise doing it. If you uncheck setup locomotion, then it will not set up any locomotion modules. They won't be able to move effectively. The same with allow locomotion. You can change where the locomotion modules are stored. I don't know why you would do this. It's normal for them to be inside the user spawner's locomotion modules here, but you can change that. You can also set a force default locomotion. This is the ability to force them into a default locomotion when they join the world. This is useful for worlds where you want an experience where they're forced by default into physical or forced by default into fly for some reason. You should also use the blacklist system to set that up, but here you can just force the default one. Item shelves controls these things being on, these gray things, you can turn those off. Circular menus controls these, yep, you can turn those off too. Parent clients to server, I don't know what that does. Align tracking will, I don't know actually either. Empty avatar slot handler is a good thing. It will basically force anyone who hasn't got an avatar into the avatar listed here. So that's good if you want an experience that's kind of themed or anything, and you want anyone that doesn't have an avatar to not be the default head. I do that to the spaceman avatar on moon landing. I set that up, I don't know how many months ago, but that means anyone that doesn't have an avatar will be in the spacesuit avatar when they join in. Auto optimize avatars, I think is the like texture optimization tip or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. That's all there is to it. Oh, you can also uncheck load cloud avatars here, and that will prevent anyone's avatar from loading, and then everyone will be forced into this empty avatar slot handler if they join the world. That's useful if you want to have like a common avatar for an experience. I've seen someone do that. Murder's an example that did that. That's it for the user spawner kind of permission-y things. They're not really permission-y things, but they are kind of like world maintenance and management things, so I hope that helps. We'll go on to step 3 now, which is like a couple of use cases. I'm also going to demo a world, which I've made but haven't published, that shows off how to do some things that might be common. So let's go ahead to part 3.